Welcome to the Commercial Property Podcast. My name is Suzi Carter. I am a chartered surveyor. I've been involved in commercial property in the UK for 30 years and I've done hundreds of commercial property deals. I'm here to be your guide through the commercial property market, whether you're an experienced investor or whether you're literally thinking about dipping your toe in the world of commercial real estate. I will be here talking to you about all kinds of things commercial real estate in the UK, and I've also got some fantastic guest experts who are joining me. So please do subscribe if you'd like to follow, and if you'd like any more help or information on commercial real estate, please do click www.suzicarter.com, which is my website, and you can find out all the ways I can help you. So stay tuned for this week's episode. So I wanted to talk to you about the mindset you need for investing in commercial property. Now, on the face of it, it might seem the same as residential or lots of other investments. So I want to talk about kind of why you'd invest in commercial, right down to kind of maybe some things that you need to think about before you do invest. And some of the blockers that I've seen when I'm working with clients in their commercial property investing. So I think that probably the first thing to say is that you need to understand that commercial property is no more complicated than residential investing, than investing in the stock market. Each of those needs to be, bond markets, crypto, whatever it might be. You don't embark on any of them before you understand what you're doing. You need to understand, obviously, how the market works. You need to understand the different strategies you can use to add value. And you need to make sure that you've got your checks and balances, you understand the risks and the returns associated with that. You also need to understand that you need to bring in people to help you with that, whatever that might look like. So if you're investing in the stock market, you might want to bring in experts in that. You might want to use websites that will help you understand the market and market movement, etc. And it's no different in the commercial property market. So you wouldn't embark on any investing strategy until you understand it. And what I find from a lot of particularly residential investors is that there is concern about the fact that they don't understand it, that it feels very complex, that it feels like there's lots of different strategies. It feels like maybe a more sophisticated market. And the fact is that all of that is true. None of that is false. But everything's intimidating when you haven't done it before. So this is a case of getting knowledge, understanding knowledge, and kind of moving forwards with it. And I like to think that there's kind of three main obstacles to investing in commercial property. So first one is knowledge. I think there's sometimes a bit of intimidation around commercial, a bit of fear around it as well. And we'll talk about mindset in a minute. But I think that obviously that can all be overcome by getting some knowledge and really just starting to operate in the market. Start looking at commercial properties, start getting educated, start understanding how it works, and bring in people that can help you. So who are they? Well, obviously, you might want to do some training. You definitely need to have some agency contacts. So commercial agents who can help you, whether that's from a acquisitions point of view or a lettings point of view, or from a professional point of view, as in rent reviews, lease renewals, etc. So you definitely want to be able to bring in agents who can help you at different points, management. There's all types of different types of agents and commercial surveyors, and you want to bring them at different phases. So when you're first buying something, you'll need to speak to agents about the market, tenant demand, rents, lease terms you're going to get. You want to understand also valuation. You want to understand potential for asset management, and agents can really help you with all of that. And also you'll engage surveyors to do your due diligence, whether that's from a survey point of view to kind of an asset management, multiple exit type of view. And then you'll bring in agents when you've bought the property, whether that's to do a lease renewal or a rent review, or whether that's to relet properties or whatever else it might be. You'll certainly probably want them to manage them for you, especially if they're multi-let, so you can bring in managing agents who are surveyors, agents. And at points during the ownership, there'll be other things to do. You might want to sell off part, you might want to do a rent review, you might want to do a lease renewal. That there'll be lots of different ways that you might want to use agents. So agents are a really important part of your arsenal. How do you find a great agent? Well, there's great agents in local markets, so really understand who knows the market in your local area, and build relationships. Commercial property is all about building relationships, and then just make sure that you nurture those relationships. Relationships are two-way. I find a lot of relationships with commercial agents break down when you're just trying to suck them dry for information. That's not what it's all about. It's a two-way street. Agents will help you, but they're also, they need to produce fees. They kind of eat what they kill, so they need to get remunerated for it, and that's absolutely fair enough. So kind of make sure that you're not just you'll find relationships don't last very long if it's a one-way street and you're just trying to pump them for information. They need to feel like you're going to do deals and you're going to use them for management or lettings or whatever else it might be. You also need to bring in a great commercial solicitor, and there's lots of different types of solicitor, obviously, but two main types of solicitor you'll need to use during your ownership. One is a conveyancing solicitor when you buy the property. Also, when you're doing lettings, you'll need them to produce leases. I would recommend you have your own lease that you can then roll out across different properties. And then you'll also potentially, let's hope not too often, you may need litigation solicitors, when you're in conflict. Now, sometimes it doesn't have to be massive conflict, doesn't have to mean court cases. What it can mean is lease renewals, rent reviews, breaches of lease clauses, whatever else it might be. So you'll definitely need to kind of employ them. And those two parties, mainly surveyors, agents, and lawyers, can really, really help you increase your knowledge. Lawyers can really help you with commercial leases. If there's a lease on a property and you need to understand it more, then they can really help you. I'd also, by the way, recommend that you speak to an agent about a lease, because they can look at it with like a different pair of spectacles. They can look at it with a more of a commercial head on them. So that's definitely something to think about. And obviously there's lots of different professionals that you've used. I've done a separate episode on kind of power teams, so listen to that. But in terms of knowledge, that's kind of what you need. And then I suppose the third wheel to the knowledge is really that you need to I strongly recommend that you niche your investing strategies. And the fact is that there's so many different types of commercial property in the UK that it can be overwhelming if you're scattergun investing, because you can't, it's all about tenant demand, it's all about supply and demand, it's all about location, and you can't get under the skin of that if you're scattergun investing. So I strongly recommend that you niche your strategies, which means that you can really become a specialist in one or two areas, and that you will understand. You don't need to stack your deals. It's not as difficult to stack deals because you're actually have the knowledge. You're the specialist in that market. You're the specialist in that sector. So niching can really increase your knowledge. And yes, you do have to do that information gathering. You do have to find that knowledge, but you do it once. And once you've actually bought in that market, you naturally become the specialist in that market, and then you can roll that knowledge out across other deals. So I definitely recommend, obviously, diversification. That's why I recommend you have one or two or three niches. But you definitely need to make sure that you don't scattergun invest too much, because then you're trying to find that knowledge every single time and it just becomes really onerous. And I see many people fall down with that particular hurdle where, they're like, oh, it's just really hard work, this commercial investing. And that's because they're scattergun investing. They're having to start from scratch every time they find a new deal, because it's in a different location, it's a different sector, it's a different type of property, whatever it might be. So definitely try and drill down. So that's kind of the knowledge piece. The second one is money. Now, money is obviously really important. You need to have money to invest, but it doesn't have to be your own money. And there's lots of different ways that you can leverage your own money, or you can just leverage to buy commercial property. Same with any type of investment. So different ways you can do that, obviously, is by using your own assets, kind of leveraging your own assets, whether that's those owned personally or in a business, kind of borrowing on those. You can use your pension, especially if you have a SAS. You can lend that to your limited company, or you can invest within your pension in your SAS. And I've done a whole separate episode on the podcast with Kevin Whelan from Wealth Builders, so definitely listen back to that to understand kind of investing in a SAS in commercial property in a SAS. You can obviously use investors as well. You can use angel investors who will lend you money for an interest rate, and obviously there's loads around that in terms of who are they, what are they looking for, what kind of interest rate are you willing to pay, what kind of security can you provide, super important. And I could do a whole episode on that, which I will do at some point in time. But working with investors, working with them properly, making sure that you comply with FCA rules, and you only deal with people who are self-certified high net worth or sophisticated investors. There's a whole piece around that, and obviously there's a kind of money laundering piece as well. So that's a really complex piece, but in simplistic terms, you can use investors to invest in commercial real estate, and you can either give them guarantees or first charges on property or whatever else it might be. So that's basically leveraging other people's money. Now, you can also use JV partners. You can also work with JV partners. I've got a number of JV partners who, I treasure. I've done some fantastic deals with them, and, we have great relationships as a result of it. I'm very picky with who I work with. And that those relationships have evolved over time, and there's total trust in those relationships, and we're all we're very much aligned. Now obviously there's JV partners and there's JV partners, and you need to make sure that you work with people who's, I would say, the number one way of working with people is making sure that your values are aligned. And I can truthfully say that my JV partners are exactly that, like that. Our values are totally aligned. So I wouldn't recommend entering into JVs. It's one of those marry in haste, repent at leisure. So I would definitely recommend getting to know JV partners before you enter into a relationship with them, because sometimes they can be hard to exit, and also make sure that you have all the right paperwork in place. But JVs can be a fantastic way of leveraging other people's money, their time, their expertise, whatever else that might be, to buy real estate. So and then obviously there's bank finance. I did a whole other episode on kind of playing the commercial finance game, using commercial finance. So that there's bank finance that you can use to leverage, and that can be a bridging finance, or it can be term finance. Lots of different types of finance you can use, but and obviously if you're doing development, there's kind of senior debt, mezzanine finance, etc. So lots of different types of where you can use bank debt. But I would recommend speaking to a great broker, and you'll hear in a minute Bond Finance, who I use, and I think that they are really a great broker to use. So I'd strongly recommend them.
This episode is brought to you by Bond Finance Limited, your trusted partner for commercial property mortgage solutions. Are you an experienced residential property investor about to diversify into commercial property, looking for funding options? Bond Finance can help. Whether you're planning to expand, refinance, or make a major property investment, Bond Finance provides expert advice with access to a wide range of lenders, from high street to specialist. Book a free discovery session today to explore how we can tailor commercial funding solutions to your unique investment strategy. Visit www.bondfinanceltd.co.uk and take the next step in your commercial finance journey.
In terms of, we've gone through agents, we've gone through and solicitors. So knowledge, who can help you get the knowledge and who can help you with your investing. We've talked about money and, lots of different ways you can raise money. And I just wanted to kind of finish off on that, in that I think there's a mindset shift that needs to happen with money. I think there's a mindset shift that needs to happen with commercial investing, actually. And I see a lot of residential investors are saying, oh, isn't it too expensive? Isn't it too complicated? And for me, that's a mindset shift. Nothing is complicated when you understand it, when you've got the knowledge, when you've been practicing it for long enough. And in terms of kind of getting investor finance and working with others, again, that's entirely possible. The devil's in the detail. There might be horrendous horror stories that you've heard about people working with investors and JV partners, and there might be some amazing stories. So the devil's in the detail. You need to work with the right people, have that mutual trust. And, I think there's a mindset shift you need with commercial property, because it is, a lot of people see it as a leveling up, and that there's no problem with that. You just need to understand it. So with every kind of level, there's another devil. You need to understand it, but it can be a fantastic way of investing. So we've talked about knowledge, we've talked about money, and the other blocker that I find that a lot of people have is time. So if commercial property is one of many strings to your bow, whether you've got a day job and you want to invest in property, whether you're an existing investor in maybe residential, whether you're a business owner, whatever else it might be, then I find that time can quite often be a blocker. Now, what I recommend when people look at commercial investing is to niche their strategies, because it does save a lot of time and effort later down the line. But of course, when you're finding your niche, it can be quite time consuming, because you always start with a long list. I have had clients who come to work with me who just know their niche straight away. They've got some kind of USP, and there's such an obvious niche. I had one board client once that kind of sat with me, and I think the rest of the board were in total awe, because he had the most detailed, fantastic niche that it was just so apparent it was totally right for him. But a lot of people come to me and they don't understand what their niche should be, and we work on it together. And sometimes it takes a few weeks, sometimes it takes a few months to find that niche. I guess kind of there is some work that needs to happen to find that niche. And also, when you're sourcing, you need to have time for sourcing. I find, and I kind of talk to my board clients about this, that actually sourcing is one of those important but not urgent activities, unless you're really up against it and the only thing you can do is acquire property to get you out of a hole or whatever else. A lot of time, many people are doing other things, working on existing deals, got existing jobs, another business, whatever else it might be. So sourcing, in my experience, and working with many, many clients, can get put on the back burner. It's one of those things that's so easy not to do. And, I would strongly recommend that you carve time out to do sourcing. Make sure it's done on set days every week. I teach my clients some really great systems they can use to do sourcing, diary invites to yourself, and also using leverage. I use VAs and PAs to help me with my sourcing, because there's quite a lot of kind of low value tasks that are involved, certainly at the front end of sourcing, like finding opportunities, listing them out, maybe direct to vendor sourcing, which I would strongly recommend, by the way, that you do with commercial property. Data scraping, I wouldn't recommend that you do that yourself. I would recommend that you leverage that to a VA. So time can be leveraged, whether that's using commercial agents, solicitors, using a trainer to help you, and also maybe using a VA, but also kind of making sure that you're very strict with your time and you allocate time for sourcing. If acquiring commercial property is all you're doing, you'll probably find the time for sourcing. But if you're doing anything else, then I would suggest that perhaps it's one of the first things that can kind of slip by the wayside. And I'm talking with complete knowledge, having fallen into that trap myself previously, and also working with many, many clients who kind of, put their hand up and say, yes, actually, that's me. I need to get better at systemizing my sourcing. So expertise, knowledge, money, and time. For me, they're the three potential blockers and potential obstacles to your investing. Now, forearmed is forewarned. So I would strongly recommend that a great exercise to do is to journal on this, think about all your blockers in each of those categories and where you might be able to overcome them. And if you do that exercise, then very often, there's some really great stuff comes out of it. And our brain is a wonderful thing. When we start thinking about something, our reticular activating system, that part of your brain that starts to notice things, like, for example, if we buy a red car, what do you see on the streets? You see red cars. So if you start thinking about, kind of what my blockers are, who can help me with this, kind of how can I find investors? How can I find money? It's amazing how the subconscious just keeps working on it and finds the answers to all of that. So a little bit of a different topic this week, because I just wanted to bring in some of my experience of working with a lot of clients who, it's not necessarily a commercial property specific list of issues, but for me, they are obstacles that can get in the way of people's investing. So hopefully, forearmed is forewarned, and having that kind of information can help you overcome some of those blockers.